Hello, everybody, and welcome. So, a few of you are just saying in the chat, how do you get onto the webinar? Well, we should be live now, so you should be able to see and hear us. But yeah, welcome everybody. So, I'm Mark, and this is Jules from Brain or Shine, if we haven't met before. And if we have met before, welcome back. And it's lovely to see you all. I've seen some familiar names coming up in the chat as well. So, just to let you know how the webinar works, we're scheduled to around about 6 o'clock, because we appreciate you all have busy lives, and also we all have limited capacity sometimes to concentrate on things when you have a brain injury. So we'll aim for around about half an hour. It's a safe environment and nobody can see anybody else on here. So you can only see us, we can't see you. So don't worry if you're laying on the sofa or whatever you're doing, we can't see your camera or anything like that, so that's fine. The only bit we can see is your names in the chat. So please do interact with the chat, put anything you like in there as well, and we'll try and respond to them ourselves. But it's really good because people do interact with each other on there as well. So if you post it in the chat, everybody else can see it. And we will try and, as I say, come back to any comments or questions or feedback, or most importantly, advice. And I say that last one most importantly because we may be sitting here hosting this webinar, we may be sharing some tips, but a lot of the stuff we learn, we've actually learned from people like yourselves who are living with brain injury, or like Jules does, lives with somebody who has the brain injury. So I think that's everything really, isn't it?
That is everything. And don't worry if for whatever reason that you may have to leave this live webinar, because it is recorded and we will put the link out in the usual places. So if for any reason you do need to log off, it's absolutely fine, don't worry. Yeah. But thank you so much for everyone for coming on. And this is a huge subject, fatigue, and half an hour, you know, we're probably just going to scratch the surface because it is the most challenging and common effect of a brain injury, and almost certainly I would wager something that nobody's come across or experienced before, because it is completely different. It's not tired. Chronic fatigue is when your brain is exhausted, and just having a good night's sleep doesn't cure it.
Unfortunately not, no. And sadly I learned that the real hard way, because a lot of people on here will know my story, but we didn't actually get any support following my brain injury. I was just signed off and just told to live my life as normal. And that is what I attempted to do. Went back to doing the same work that I was doing before as a school speaker. And when I used to feel the effects of fatigue, I didn't even know what they were. So as Jules was saying, I thought that fatigue and tired were the same thing. And I was just tired and I just needed to rest, but I couldn't understand why it was affecting my functionality. Now, there's lots of different types of fatigue. There is fatigue for people without brain injury, of course, but pathological fatigue is the one that affects me personally most, and what I've found through the brain injury community. And it's where your brain just stops functioning because the fatigue just takes over. And that's been the hardest one to deal with. And until I understood it and was able to accept that this was going to happen and it's not going to go away, then I could put things into place to think, right, okay, how can we go forward with this? How can we help to manage it? How can we help to almost live with it, but not let it own us?
That's right.
That was the thing, wasn't it, really? Not letting it own our lives.
And managing fatigue effectively, it requires like a combination of a few things. For example, some lifestyle adjustments, which are hard because you don't want to. You want to have the life that you had pre-brain injury. We all do. But accepting that you're going to have to make some lifestyle changes. And that is hard for both parties. You may need some medical support, and there are some self-care strategies. So we're just going to have a little look at those. But yeah, Gail, accepting is the difficulty.
Yeah.
Once you can almost accept that, then you can learn to live with it and then manage it. And that's what we're going to have a little look at, because it can improve with just these slight adjustments. You
Yeah.
can learn to live with it and have a good life. We manage it most times. We're not perfect. We have some bad days still, but on the whole, it is what it is. No day's the same. We try and put these things into place, but sometimes Mark's brain has just had to process so much information, it shuts down, and we just have to shut down.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and again, if you have any tips or anything that's worked really well for you, then do pop them in the chat, because it does help us and it helps everybody else as well. So I just want to sort of start with the recognition of fatigue. And I think for me in the early days, it was realizing that my brain was shutting down and why it was shutting down. And I found that there was no consistency with it. So I could find that I could work, say, really hard for 3 days, take 2 days to rest, and then find on day 3 of resting, I felt more tired than I did on day 1. And that was really, really, really strange. I'd also find that sometimes, say, we'd have a week's holiday and we'd go away, and I felt absolutely fine at the start of the week when I'd switched it off. And then all of a sudden, boom, this fatigue would just come and hit me from nowhere. And I just couldn't understand why that would happen, because I thought, I haven't done anything. I haven't done anything in the days leading up to this. So how come I can't function? So the place I started with, and I got a lot of help from a community support brain injury hospital through the NHS, was to actually look at what the triggers were. What did I do leading up to the fatigue? What sort of things would trip the fatigue? And I found that emotional and stress and noise were 3 things, and overly concentrating as well. So long drives, for instance, were a real trigger. Being stressed out by someone or something became a real trigger. And also the noise, as I say, I mentioned the noise. So being in a noisy, busy, overstimulating place with lots of information. So when I found that those were the 3 triggers, and the way I did this was by keeping a fatigue diary and looking at what I was doing that week and where I was feeling fatigue and scoring my fatigue. And you can actually download one of these, from our website, brainillshine.com.
We're just updating it, actually.
We are, actually,
so,
yeah.
yes.
You've just done some work on that. Fantastic.
No, it's not quite finished yet.
Not quite. We'll get there. But then when I realised that things like stress would trigger my fatigue, I looked at how to remove stress from my life. And one thing that was really easy to remove from my life quite quickly was any negativity around me. So obviously, I can't get away from people I work with, and I can't get away from situations that are negative, but I can switch off things like negative news, negative media, and I can stop engaging in negative conversation. And what I found myself being able to do in that situation was, if there was a group of people and they were all having a moan about something, I actually found it quite easy to leave that conversation. Just say, look, do you know what? I'm struggling to take on the information. I'm just going to go and take some time out. And I'd walk away from the conversation. It was simple as that, really. And that made a massive, massive difference. And it was instant. It was something I could do just like that. So that's a good little tip. Just move away from negativity. If you're reading the scary news or whatever, then that's something you can switch off straight away. Switch off the news streams.
Yeah, understanding the different types of fatigue. There's obviously physical fatigue, when you're feeling just physically drained, and even the slightest little thing that you try to do, you can't manage it. But there's mental fatigue, where, as Mark said, the difficulty with the concentrating, not even thinking clearly, and certainly not remembering things. And the emotional, and I quite often, from our experience, the emotional fatigue was one of the hardest ones, because that feeling of overwhelm and being easily irritated and just not able to focus or do anything, and really quite frustrated, that was the hardest ones. And I think that the emotions play such a part with the fatigue.
Yeah, definitely.
You want to yawn right now. I just saw him try not to yawn.
Yeah. And that's something key that Rosemary's just put in the comments there about it's important that your loved ones are aware of this and they support you. Because again, I always find that if Jules says something which is quite direct at me, I will go really defensive about it. And I've learned in a lot of ways to try not to bite back. For example, you mentioned memory, and you told me something quite important the other day, which I have no memory of at all. And I didn't get annoyed with Jules, and I didn't disbelieve Jules, but I felt really gutted because I thought that was important. Why did I not hear it? Where did you tell me it? And in the end, Jules went, do you know, it doesn't matter. We don't need to worry about it. You know now, and it's fine. We can move forward with it because, okay, it was important, but it was important 2 days ago, but it's still important now. And the event hasn't passed and the bit of information still isn't important. We can still deal with it. We've got about 2 weeks until the event comes up, which was a bit of information that I needed. So if Jules had told me that and I'd have forgotten and not turned up for the event, then there is a bit more of an issue. But I think that's the key, is we work together on those things, and Jules can say, well, we've got this coming up, let's help and look at ways of planning this together.
But yeah, making sure that, yeah, your loved ones, they are aware of it and understand it. Again, a big issue for us in the early days. We got such a bad feedback from family and friends of, well, why is he tired? He can't be tired. And oh, I think he's putting it on. I was taking the mickey out of you. I was doing this. And it was very, very difficult because there was part of me sometimes used to think, is this for real? And it wasn't until, so we went to the Icebrook Hospital where we got this level of understanding and then were able to educate them. But this is why we are doing what we're doing now, because I think it's crucial that people are educated as to what fatigue is, what chronic fatigue is, because it is an illness. It's something that you suffer from, and it's not something that you want. It's not something that you can wave a wand and think, well, it's not going to happen today, because who knows what might happen. You know, we've been planning for this today, and as soon as we start doing it, Mark's sitting here now and he's yawning, and this is something that happens every single day. He'll get in a car and he'll say, oh, I'll drive. I say, okay. The first thing that he does, obviously, puts his seatbelt on, starts the car. We pull out and he starts yawning because he knows he's having to concentrate. And the first thing that he does is that fatigue. It's like the yawns, his eyes water. You see, he's doing this. Classic signs that I know that he's struggling mentally at the moment.
Yeah, I'm being honest, I'm having to push through a little bit at the moment. But I've just seen in the comments there as well that Claire said, and I know we've talked about this before, Claire, you've shared this with us, that you're struggling to sleep and your fatigue shocking. And when you manage to grab a nap or have a bit of sleep, you feel like your battery's having a little bit of a recharge. But then I remember you saying you sometimes struggle to sleep at night as well. Bless you. And that is really hard. And I sometimes find that where I'm so tired, I'm so fatigued, I go to bed and then I just lay there and I can't get to sleep, or I'll wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning and it's like, why am I awake? I'm so tired. But if anybody as well wants to share in the chat anything that you're really struggling with or anything you're finding that's working. So obviously I've said earlier about me removing negativity, as much negativity as I can from life has really, really helped me. If anybody's got any other ones, then that's really, really appreciated.
But yeah, sleep disruption is something very, very common from having chronic fatigue, unfortunately. But people mask all the time. And one of the things that we also do is the 3 Ps, don't we?
Yes.
So as much as possible, we try and plan, prioritize and pace our days.
I'm glad you said that, because I was trying to think what the third one was then. It's pace. That's where my mind, I was like, we've been talking about this all week and then I forgot the pacing one. But yeah, if you can put a plan together, then that's great. And this is a life skill anyway. It's not just about having a brain injury. We do a lot of work with teenagers who are going through run into their revision for their exams at the moment. Have a plan in place. Have a plan. If you have a plan in place, then that's good. prioritize what you need to work on, what bits you're struggling with, and then pace yourself. So we always put the fourth one in there to avoid, which is procrastination. And as a human race, we love leaving things till the last minute. And in fact, I'm really proud of us because we've got a busy end to this month and a busy start to next month. We've actually got a lot of our stuff done already for the first parts of March. So we know that if we left that another week or so, we'd be rushing around like mad to get that done. And this isn't just about work, it's about everything. It's about planning your day out, planning your week out, planning your rest times in, and planning the times that you're going to be active, and then prioritizing what's important, pacing yourself so you're not doing everything the last minute or not doing everything all on one day and having 3 days after rest, doing a little bit each day if that works for you, but also accepting, and this is a big one for us, we could plan a day out, we could plan a week out, we could plan whatever out, and then all of a sudden fatigue hits me and it's like, right, there goes the plan out the window. I've got up in the morning, it's 9:15, I've had a great night's sleep, and then all of a sudden fatigue kicks in and I'm completely ineffective, and I'm working on a task or I'm doing something and I'm thinking, this just isn't working. I really, really need to move away from this now. And it's really hard sometimes to put that task down and think, right, this isn't going to work. It is
really, really hard. But yeah, plan, prioritize, pace.
Yeah.
And where possible, don't procrastinate. But
yeah,
it's difficult. Sometimes you can't get your to-do list done.
Got some good comments coming in as well, actually.
Yeah, and I mean, we're talking about sleep a little bit, and you know, there is some tools, some ideas on how to try and improve your sleep quality. For example, trying to maintain those regular sleep cycles, so therefore going to bed at the same time, so that you wake up at the same time. That's generally quite a good thing to try to do if you can manage that. And also maybe have a relaxing bedtime routine before. So if you're saying, well, I'm going to try and go to bed at 10:30, half an hour at least, stay off any sort of screen work. Don't have anything heavy to eat or caffeine, and maybe generate a nice sleeping environment. So make sure your room's a nice temperature, there's no bright lights, and this is the one that I really like, and I'm very keen on this one, is minimize clutter. And there's a saying that a tidy room equals a tidy mind. You know, so if you've got a lot of clutter around you and that's what you're seeing when you're going to bed, it won't help that calm that you're trying to create. I'm not promising you that that will happen and that you will sleep for a lovely 8 hours, because we don't. But it is nice, and we do have the routine, and we do, on the whole, try and go to bed at the same time every night and have that same nice routine.
Definitely. Going to come to a few of the comments. So just going back to Claire mentioned about masking earlier, and Amanda, I've found that now that I mask a lot less than I used to. There's times where I will absolutely wing it and pretend that I'm not tired at all. I can't do that with Jules because she knows straight away. But the majority of the time, if I'm not feeling right and I'm feeling fatigued, I'll generally be quite honest with people. The other day we was with a group of people, and I just went, look, do you know, I'm really, really struggling. If I'm a little bit quiet, then just excuse me for a moment. And they were absolutely fine. They were absolutely fine. They were really understanding, and they were actually people that we'd recently met as well.
Yeah.
So they weren't lifelong friends or anything. We'd probably met them 2 or 3 times in the past, and we'd met them through some social groups more recently. And we decided to catch up with them one evening. I just said, look, I'm really struggling now. I'm struggling with a lot of noise, and I'm struggling because we've been talking a while. And the conversation went on to 2 people plus Jules, and I was able to sit back and just recharge in that moment, which was good. Claire's obviously mentioned about melatonin as well, and sleep restriction therapy, which are great ideas. But I just I saw one here that Nicole said, about, can you explain why fatigue is happening after a brain injury in a nutshell? And there was a really good analogy I was given of this in the early days of my recovery, was imagining your brain is like an old mobile phone or an old device like an iPad, for instance. Now I have an iPad which is about 6 or 7 years old, And what I noticed the other day was I went to download or do an update on one of the apps on there, and the app stopped working, which is really, really annoying, but that's another story. The reason why the app stopped working is because the process is out of date on it. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to install something new on an old iPad. And if I try and liken that to my brain injury has almost limited my capacity. So if I try and install new information into my brain, if I try and run new apps on it, or if the battery runs out and I plug it in for 2 or 3 minutes and try and charge it and then try and use it again after 2 or 3 minutes, the battery's going to go flat. And our brain works very, very similar because we have a damage to our neural pathways or to our brain in some form. It affects the way that we process the information. So that old app is not processing very well on my iPad, so it crashes now. My brain, because it's not processing at the full capacity all the time, the apps are crashing, and the apps is just the information, or my functionality is crashing sometimes. So that was a good way of thinking about it. Imagine it's an old device which is trying to run new software on it. It's nothing to do with your age, by the way, because sometimes people say, well, you're getting older, that's why it's happening. Nothing to do with your age. It's just that we have a damage to our pathways. So I hope that helps there, Nicole.
Yeah, and fatigue is like one of those hidden disabilities, and part of it also depends where your brain injury, where you sustained it, as to what hidden disabilities and other things may be there that are also having that knock-on effect to your fatigue. So there's 2 or 3 sort of little factors in there as to what causes the fatigue, and it, as Mark says, it's your brain trying to function with an inadequate system. There you go. However, there are certain things that you can sort of relearn or retrain your brain, because it can use other pathways, but it's a bit of a long process, but worth sticking at. Definitely. If there's something that you can't do anymore that you want to retry and do, or even if you want to learn something new. Bless you.
Excuse me. That was building up that sneeze.
Lots of water all day and drinking. Jean has said that. Yeah. Absolutely. Physical activity and nutrition really will help. Just gentle exercise, nothing crazy, like walking or yoga or even just stretching. Stretching your body is so good for it. It's lovely, and it just gets the blood flowing and that, but definitely drinking a lot of water.
I like this one as well that Sita's put in here about trying to stay in the present really helps. Mm-hmm. And I find exactly the same as you, Sita. I find my mind runs away with me. And also overthinking. If you're overthinking something, what you're doing, you're running your processor down all the time. You're trying to put like that new app onto the old system. So that's exactly what it's like. And Amanda also said, I'm slowly learning to warn people that I can change plans. I can make plans, but there's always a chance I might not be able to make them. And that's always a really good way of planning ahead and managing expectations. So if a friend says to you, I'm having a party and there's going to be loads of people there, it's really exciting, by saying, yes, I'll come to the party, but if I have to step outside the room sometimes because it's noisy, you have to bear with me. Or there might be a chance if I'm really, really feeling fatigued that I can't make it at the last minute, please don't hold that against me. And if you say those things, it's a worst case scenario situation, but you've set the expectation before. And I've been there before where I've pulled out of a party and not told the person, and then 2 or 3 months later realised that I actually feel like I've really let them down. So manage the expectations is a good one. And we've got some more there, haven't we, as well? So I just thought
I've heard about the limited number of spoons with your energy.
Okay, yeah, that's interesting.
Nichols, I've heard that one before. And, you have to think about which way you want to sort of explain it. But it is that thing of trying to have your loved ones to understand it. And I know there's a number of people that have joined our peer-to-peer group on Facebook, and they're still struggling with people just, partners just not understanding it. So we just need to keep the message going out there that this is real. This is a real thing that you're living with every single day. It is chronic. It isn't an illness. I don't know. I don't really want to call it an illness, but I don't know what else to call it.
Yeah, it's difficult, isn't it?
And it will come and go as it pleases, really. There's a lots of things that what you said that we can do. Definitely the exercise, the balanced diet, the staying hydrated, planning, prioritizing, taking regular breaks. If you need to have a nap in the afternoon, have a nap. But what I would suggest, and something that we found out, don't leave your nap till too late in the afternoon, because that can have a little bit of a knock on in terms of your sleep later on.
Yeah.
And I know that's, again, it's not always feasible to do it, but if you are going to plan to have a nap or it comes on, if you can sleep earlier in the afternoon rather than too late.
Yeah, yeah. And thanks for sharing that, Nicole, as well. We've got the link in the chat as well for the braincharity.org.uk about the spoon theory.
Alexandra says condition instead of illness. It's because we went on a fatigue webinar and they were calling it an illness. I think it's stuck in my brain.
Yeah, I think condition's actually a lot better, really, because again, illness, you have a stigma attached to it. And it's like disability. There's a stigma attached to it, and you always feel they're quite defeatist words, aren't they?
Yeah.
Whereas if you say, condition, illness, and sometimes, again, I think it's that acceptance thing, because when I found out I had a hidden disability and then somebody went, oh, that means you're disabled then, I thought, no, I'm not. I'm not disabled. That's not fair. You can't call me that. And then I thought, well, actually, it is a disability because my brain is not as able as it used to be and my functionality is not as able. I'm physically absolutely fine, but cognitively is not. So the word hidden disability came along then, and I actually feel more comfortable with that these days. But yeah, things like the words have stigmas attached to them, and we could either change it or we could get comfortable with it. And I don't like the word illness either, because I don't like to think I'm poorly or I'm ill.
No. But I think condition is
a good one.
Right, there you go.
Yeah.
I'm gonna keep saying that now for the next 24 hours and get that firmly lodged, hopefully, into my memory.
Brilliant. And you can remind me about it as well, which is great. Claire's put also about walking every day with friends and dogs, which is a great thing for positive mental health. And sometimes I can drive to meet them. There's some days where you can't drive, so they drive to you. That sounds like a really, really nice community. Yeah. And I think that's a lovely thing when you have a friendship with somebody who understands it, or a partner who understands it. It makes it so much easier. But it does start with the work and the groundwork and the honesty and the almost planning ahead and the setting expectations. So yeah, that's really good. And a lot of the expectations, again, I set with people, or Jules sets for me. People do generally understand it, don't they?
Yes, they do. And one of the things that we said right at the beginning, if they don't understand it or they don't want to understand it, then we maybe just don't want them in our lives. And I know that sounds quite harsh, but there's no point battling with them and having those difficult conversations. Or we have certain people that we keep at a distance, don't we?
Yeah.
Because it's easier than having to have these hard conversations all the time where they really don't quite get it.
Yeah, absolutely. I like here that Nicole's followed up and said, everyone around me asked me how many spoons I've used.
Yeah,
That's really good.
I do remember that, because you get given so many spoons, and if you're down to your last spoon.
It's like, that's it. But it's really good as well, because again, that's removed a bit of stigma from it, saying, well, my spoons, or I use my battery sometimes, and batteries feeling a little bit like it needs charging now. And sometimes I say I just need a bit of maintenance. I need a maintenance rest or something like that. So things like that. And people sometimes think, well, that's not really important, is it? To us, sometimes the little things are the things that make the big differences, aren't they?
And I also think what you mentioned earlier, when we were looking at what the different triggers are, is when those fatigue, when it comes in, and it just comes in like I call it like a freight train or a wrecking ball, whatever you want to call it. It's worth spending some time just jotting down and thinking, what were you doing at that time? that might have triggered it? How were you feeling? Were you feeling a bit tired? Were you feeling a bit sad? Were you feeling a bit angry? How were your emotions? And just jotting some of that down, because then you can sometimes then start to recognize the fatigue coming in earlier, so you don't push yourself too much and think, right, okay, I think I've done enough now, maybe I need to rest now before I overexert myself and really wipe myself out. So it's great to try and see the different things that trigger it, whether it is where you are, what you're feeling, sometimes who you're with.
Definitely. Well, just looking at the time, we're coming up to 6 o'clock, so we'll probably have a couple more minutes or so, I think, because there's some good discussions going on and we don't want to just log off now. But I've noticed on here, Claire's asked a question about people feeling the cold now, especially when fatigue's bad, temperature drops rapidly. Now, I know that you don't have a brain injury, but you feel colder when you're tired, don't you?
I do.
Yeah.
I've always done that. The two worst things that I can have, or situations to put me in, is for me to be cold, feeling tired, and then actually add in if I'm hungry, and oh my gosh. If I get a bit annoyed, don't I?
Yeah. Bizarrely, I don't feel the cold, but since my brain injury, I've struggled with temperature, so extreme hot or extreme cold.
Definitely.
And if I pick up a hot plate, for instance, that is really, really hot, or put my hands into hot water. Likewise, we have a big jug that we put in the fridge, big bottle of water we put in the fridge. And if I'm pouring the water from the bottle that's been in the fridge, after holding it for about 30 seconds, that feels really cold and starts to hurt my fingers. So it's a really strange situation. It's a really strange sensation, because I have the feeling of pain through either of them. It's really, really uncomfortable. And yeah, but as I say, I don't feel cold. I don't sit there and think I'm really cold now. In fact, I haven't suffered with that much through my life either. I've always been one of those people that was worn shorts in the winter in England, so that's fine.
Sita says the language is really important, and yeah, we teach a lot of that actually. The language is very, very important, and that's why I was saying earlier, I don't like the word illness, and condition is much better. And you're saying, stop saying I suffer from.
Yeah.
You say that you experience it. That's a fantastic. And then it doesn't, for you, your own mindset, it doesn't make you feel that you're making an excuse as to why you're suffering with the fatigue at that particular moment. You can say, oh, I experienced this and I'm having a bout of it now, or I can feel it building. That's brilliant. That's a great tip.
Yeah.
Because it makes you feel better about it.
Lux has put about the Facebook group. We'll tell you about that in a second. And
oh yeah, somebody else. Gail, the cold, so much more.
Oh, bless you.
I hear a lot of that. The extreme temperatures and the cold.
Yeah, definitely. And Nicole said as well, it's fair enough if people don't understand, but it's nice to have these analogies that make it easier
to explain.
And I'm with you on that, because that was twofold, because it helped me to understand it to start with, and then it helps me to explain it as well to other people, and obviously Jules likewise as well. So
Claire says that she struggles if she's cold to get warm again, and then if you're cold you can't get to sleep. Yes, so we need to create some nice Brain or Shine hot water bottles.
Brain or Shine hot water bottles. What a lovely idea. Like I said about overthinking or fatigue, and any more tips on grounding practices. So we'll look at that for the future.
Yes, we'll look at that for the next one.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say trying to cover fatigue in just over half an hour is, you could spend so much time in it that would actually fatigue us all, wouldn't it? And Jean has said about after she retired and working part-time, things have gotten so much better. Again, I'm with you on that, because Jules and I looked at a way of creating our lifestyle on our own terms, as we call it. So we didn't want to have a boss. We didn't want to have anything that was tying us or committing us to things. It took a long time, because obviously you can't just get rid of a commitment. You can't get rid of a job. You can't get rid of financial commitments. But we looked at ways to remove these from our life. And how do we get rid of that thing that's tying us down? And if you can go part-time, or you're retiring, or you're in that position as well, that's fantastic, Jean. So well done to you. We did talk about work and employment in the last webinar, and we've got some more stuff banked up for that in the future.
Yes.
So, yeah.
We've got a webinar coming up about employment law. So from the chaps from Slater and Gordon are going to give us some great tips on that. But Sita also says meditate and breathing exercises. They are wonderful for grounding and mindfulness. Yes.
Yeah.
All of that. Absolutely wonderful.
That's something else that's in the future as well. Well, it's 18:05, 6:05 where we are. It might be a different time where some of you guys are, but we've been going for 35 minutes now. And thankfully, my fatigue levels, my battery's recharged itself a little bit since when we started. So that's good. And I hope you guys are all feeling like you've got a little bit in your battery. But I'm going to go and let you recharge them now. And we both thank you
very much
for joining us this evening. If you need any more resources, or please do go to our website, which is brainOrShine.com. On that, it links to our Facebook peer-to-peer support group, which is fantastic. And I'm loving the community and the discussions that go on there, which is a really safe space for you or anybody around you to join. Partners and friends can join it as well. So please do tell them about that. Of course, we've got these webinars, which are regularly. We have a podcast where you can just listen into 10 or so minutes of episodes with just tips on there that we share. There's also a blog as well if you prefer to read. So blog, podcast, webinar, and there's a regular newsletter as well. And of course, you can reach out to us on social media, plus the Facebook peer-to-peer support group. But I always say, don't try to do all of them in one go.
We do it on different ways because we are aware that everybody's different, and some people would like to read, some people would like to listen to it. So we try and get it out there in every avenue so you don't miss it.
That's fantastic.
And thank you all for joining, and thank you for your feedback.
And the lovely comments as well. So have a lovely evening, and we shall sign off now and make the recording available as soon as possible. Have a lovely evening. Bye.
Take care, everybody. Take care.
Bye.